Hi everyone, welcome to the final panel of today in the summit, Biomethane, the foundation to tomorrow's green gas. I am today's chair, Nick Primmer from Future Biogas, working as the policy advisor. So we as a biomethane producer, can engage with this and look to the future uses of the green gas. So as the panel title suggests, biogas is a highly versatile resource. Its role may change over time as we're looking to meet different sustainability goals and decarbonisation targets, as it tackles progressively harder to decarbonise sectors. We live in a society which is built on carbon, from our building materials, our fuels, our energy, our products, and historically this has obviously been all derived from fossil resources. So as we try and defossilise, we need a new source of carbon, a biogenic source of carbon to replace these within these products. And this is where this panel come in. This fantastic panel will be talking about ways in which biomethane can form that building block to a changing industry, one with new uses for the biomethane. So our first speaker will be Dr. Keith Simons, Head of R&D at Sustainable Fuels at SHV Energy. Keith is also the chair of the WBA's PITC and its R&D working group. Next, we'd have Pierre Emmanuel Pardo, Innovation Manager at SUEZ. Pierre Emmanuel has spent 25 years managing waste and wastewater treatment issues and is now Innovation Deputy Director at SUEZ Treatment Infrastructure. Then we'll have Cinch Munson, VP of Commercial Development at Oberon Fuels. Oberon Fuels is the only commercial producer of rDME, converting agricultural wastes, food waste, bioethanol, e-methanol into rDME fuel. And then finally, last but not least, we have Sophia Haywood at Dimeta, Head of Advocacy and Communication. Sophia has previously led on the renewable transition for the UK LPG industry at Liquid Gas UK, and now Sophia is leading on the rollout of rDME for off-grid sector. So that's enough from me, and I'll pass you over to our first speaker, Keith.
Thank you very much, Nick. So, thanks very much for staying till the end. And today, the title is Biomethane, the Foundation Stone of Tomorrow's Green Gases. So, delighted to be here and speaking. And I thought the best way to end the day is with a chemistry lesson. So if you want to leave now, you'll be fully forgiven. So if I can go to the next slide. A little bit about SHV Energy. I always say SHV Energy is the largest energy company you've never heard of. But we do operate on 4 continents with 30 million customers in 25 countries with over 16,000 employees. We're not known by the name SHV Energy. We're known by our brand name in different countries. So here in the UK, we're Caligas. On much of continental Europe, we're Primmer Gas, Poland Gaspol. In the US, Pinnacle Propane. South America, Supergas Brash. So, we're delivering fuel to customers. We've diversified recently, and again, it's all about making sure that our customers have access to clean fuels. So we've been around quite a long time. Originally established in 1894, SHV stands for the Steenkolen Handelsvereniging, the Dutch Coal Trading Association. So we used to import coal from the Ruhr Valley in Germany into the Netherlands, and then diversified away from that. Moved into LPG, then LNG, biopropane, energy efficiency, solar for industrial and commercial, and then more recently started distributing bio-LNG in Italy. We're introducing renewable dimethyl ether via our JV with UGI International Dimeta, developing new pathways to new biofuels as drop-in replacements, and also in the future hydrogen. Before most of the energy majors, we set ourselves the bold ambition that by 2040 we would replace approximately 5 million tons of LPG, that's propane and butane, with renewable and sustainable alternatives by the year 2040. And that is what we have dedicated teams globally developing at the moment. We talk about the need for circular solutions. Our solutions need to be all of the above, as opposed to what we've traditionally done, which is all of the below. And unfortunately, there are no silver bullets in this. Maybe silver buckshot. We will need all of the solutions. We need, everything, everywhere, all at once, and really as soon as possible. So, unfortunately, we are seeing quite a lot of defensive lobbying from one green technology attacking another green technology. That's not a healthy situation. There's some very unhelpful arguments out there. But effectively, we look at the world with this model. We're a founder member of the Renewable Carbon Initiative, and I think renewable carbon is the key term. The fastest way to decarbonisation is defossilization. We'll need the existing infrastructure that can deliver the fuels using the existing infrastructure, those pipelines, those trucks, customer equipment. We need to take the consumer with us. And the best way is to make sure we can provide drop-in replacements for them. At the end of the day, there's only one energy source, and that's the sun. And whether or not that's for solar, that's for producing wind power for electricity, or nuclear, fission, lots of different approaches. We need the hydrogen to combine with renewable carbon from a range of different sources, whether it's biogas, whether it's recycling carbon, which has already been abstracted, or CO2. I'm not a believer in direct air capture. I'm a direct air capture denier. The energy is best used elsewhere, but we need to take renewable carbon from appropriate sources and convert that into fuels, chemicals, to satisfy our need for mobility, for heat and industrial products, and then generate this circle. We need to stop the primary hydrocarbon abstraction that we've been used to for many years. So, why all the interest from the traditional petrochemical companies into biogas? Now, I'm sure you've seen the recent announcements from Shell and BP, but rather than me answer the question, do we have anyone from BP or Shell in the room? Where's Spartacus? Could you look at the name badges of the colleagues next to you? Can we identify anyone from BP or Shell? No, you're not going to stand up and be counted? No? Okay, then I'll have to tell you what I think your company strategy is. Oh. So, of course, recently Shell announced their decision to buy, Europe's biggest biogas producer for 1.9 billion. BP bought Archaea for 4.1 billion. That's a lot of money. Maybe not for BP and Shell, but why did they do that? Are they interested in burning biomethane and combusting it? Is that why they've got involved in that, and others as well? So the reason I think that there is the interest in biogas is that it can be upgraded into valuable syngas. So, traditionally, of course, biogas, it's either been flared, converted into bioelectricity, or, of course, grid injection used for heating, CO2 separation and other valuable cores, or CNG, LNG, renewable natural gas. But, of course, technically what's also feasible is you can make syngas, whether it's for enhanced combustion, chemicals, liquid fuels, and the chemistry is developing, but basically you take biogas, that's CO2 and methane, you heat it up, usually over a nickel catalyst, though other catalysts are being developed, and you convert the CO2 and the methane into syngas, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen. And that is a very useful building block for about 40% of the world's fuels and chemicals. So syngas, of course, is probably one of the key intermediates. So what you'll come across is different terms. So in biogas reforming to syngas, you'll hear about dry reforming, where you don't add water. You'll hear about bioreforming, where you do add water, taking some of the hydrogen in the water. And then tri-reforming, don't confuse that with steam methane reforming, where you'll take all of the methane, maybe mass balanced across the grid, and then do a traditional syngas performance. Now, the benefits of biogas reforming is that more of the carbon in the CO2 goes into the fuels, so a lot more efficient. The challenges are, though, 25% deactivation. So one of the questions you should always ask is, how much of the energy in the original product is in the final product? Is it still efficient, or are you just chasing some subsidy? Which will affect things. There's lots of research into this, and of course you'll have to understand the things ICC, ICC+, ICC EU. So there are many products that can be made from that syngas. So traditionally, of course, carbon sources have been gasified to syngas, but you can make methanol, dimethyl ether, we'll hear more about that today, and then from methanol acetic acid, you'll make vinyl acetate monomers, polyvinyl acetates, polymers, propene, so lots of different products. And maybe that is why the likes of BP and Shell aren't actually being clean as to why they're acquiring the biogas, because really it's about, can you have a feedstock which is RED 2 and RED 3 compliant? In the US, of course, biogas has a negative carbon intensity, so you can carry that on whether fully or partially into your product, so you get a low carbon intensity fuel. If you want to know more about this, the GREET model, you want to shift everything to California, or at least you wanted to in the past, but now the low carbon fuel standard, which was a credit for $200, is now down to about $65, flooding the California market, probably affecting the economics of any plant. So the question is, will this lead to bad behavior? And that's a question that I think we could debate. One other thing you'll see, low carbon materials. So can you take the low carbon and then convert that into fashion items? Again, a voluntary market, but something which can be quite sensitive to green credentials. Another route which I will quickly mention, and my interest, is that biogas can be reformed into syngas, converted to LPG, whether by companies in Japan such as Foricari Electric, or in Chicago, GT Energy have a similar process. So it's also a route to bio-LPG, hence my interest. And that's what I'd like to finish by saying. We publish quite a lot through LinkedIn, so if you take a picture of the QR code, then that will get through to me, and you'll find out quite a lot of what we're publishing. So hopefully I'm all on time there, and then Nick can hand over to the next speaker. Thank you for your attention.
Hello everyone. I'm Pierre Emmanuel Pardo, Deputy Innovation Director at SUEZ, Treatment Infrastructures, but I'm mainly here as a member of WBA to share a complementary vision of the future of biogas. So let me start with the end of my presentation. Biogas will not provide for global energy needs. This is not possible, but biogas is definitely the solution for the production of industrial goods from renewable carbon. So to be able to demonstrate this, one needs a unit that makes the link between the energy and matter. I don't know for you, but today I heard about millions of BTUs, gigawatt hours, BCM, ton of oil equivalent, exajoules, but nobody can understand what exa means. So, a new unit. This new unit is a ton of carbon equivalent. Scientifically speaking, it is 14 megawatt hour. What is important is that it represents approximately the energy contained in 1 ton of carbon of an organic molecule. This makes it possible to speak in terms of physical carbon or in terms of carbon as energy. 1 gigaton of carbon is equivalent to 1 gigaton of carbon equivalent. Incidentally, this makes it possible to speak also in greenhouse gases. If instead of speaking in CO2 equivalent, we were speaking in carbon equivalent in the atmosphere, but this is not the purpose of my presentation. Let's focus on the carbon molecule. So with this unit, the world energy needs is approximately 11 gigaton of carbon equivalent, of which 2 have non-carbon energy sources and 9 have carbon energy sources. And what is important is that the majority of uses are for the production of electricity and fuel, and only 1 gigaton of carbon equivalent is used for industrial needs for the production of molecules. So how to meet all these energy needs? The biomass? Why not? Because biomass represents an enormous quantity. It's 500 gigatons of carbon, which means a potential of 500 gigatons of carbon equivalent. So if we compare it to the 9 gigaton of carbon equivalent that is needed, it seems enormous. But history has shown that if we use too quickly this resource, we will deforest. So let's leave this biomass for construction and use the residue as an energy source. But here we arrive at less than 1 gigaton of carbon equivalent. This is not enough. So if now we use what I called our human working capital, meaning that what we transform every year with our human activity, like manure and like various organic wastes. This represents more than 6 gigaton of carbon. Here it's carbon, okay? Mass of carbon in gross. But it's very dispersed. So let's say we can access 50% of this feedstock. This is only 3 gigaton available. And then there is a transformation yield, and we will, at the end, have only 1 gigaton of carbon in CH4. So this is therefore not, this therefore does not largely meet the 9 gigatons of carbon equivalent of energy needs, but it does meet the industrial needs, the 1 gigaton of carbon equivalent. So what are these industrial needs? Keith showed that a little bit. And where are these 1 gigaton of carbon? So it's essentially plastic to make all our furnitures. And these molecules used by industry come from simpler molecules, like ethylene, like propylene, methanol. And themselves, these simple molecules comes essentially from fossil carbon. This is also the case for ammonia, a large chemical element used for agricultural and industry. So you can see the number, for example, ethylene, the production of ethylene is 0.17 gigaton of carbon per year. And you have also the CO and the syngas Keith talk about at the right hand of the line there. Now, let's remove the fossil carbon. So how can we produce these molecules? First, as it had been shown by Keith, ethylene and propylene can be produced by methanol. And we have seen that methanol is made from CH4 today. So tomorrow, we can make 100% of these molecules from biogenic CH4. And we have this 1 gigaton available. Just I wanted to alert on an important point, which is the transport. Because when a carbon molecule is transformed, it must be transported to the place of transformation, for sure. Having a place of transformation have to be built and operated, and then you have to transport the final product to the end user. So for example, let's take this wet product that we have to transport for 500 kilometers to an anaerobic digester to produce biogas. Then 70% of the CH4 we will produce will be needed to run the truck. So you have to be local. So if we look at the constraints I just mentioned, anaerobic digestion checks all the boxes. It can be decentralized to limit transport. It is simple to build, easy and inexpensive to operate. Bacteria transform matters with a yield of 100%, which means that 100% of the transformed energy from the feedstock is found in the CH4 molecule, and CH4 also is very easy to transport with natural gas networks. So, the world of tomorrow will be a world where many decentralized gas production centers will supply a network of 100 biogenic natural gas, of which a few large users will transform this CH4 to produce our industrial goods, in particular via methanol and plastic. Of course, before renewable energies come to meet our global energy needs, the CH4 molecule, being versatile, is able to contribute to the energy needs. When a natural gas network is too far away, CH4 to electricity or LNG solutions is always possible. But when non-carbon energy will be here, then CH4 can be focused on the production of industrial goods. So biogas is a solution of today and tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. We will still need the carbon molecule. Just as a conclusion, SUEZ is completely in line with this development and offers a global and individualized solution for the production and use of biogas through holistic solution, making biogas happen. Thank you for your attention.
All right, so I'm with Oberon Fuels, and if you thought the chemistry lesson from Keith was good, wait till you get a chemistry lesson from a guy with a degree in business. We're going to talk just a little bit about dimethyl ether. So dimethyl ether, if you look at the molecule on the left, it looks a lot like the propane molecule, and propane is a major piece of the LPG industry. And I'll talk quite a bit about the LPG industry today. But the one difference, the middle molecule in propane is a carbon. Here it's an oxygen. Doesn't necessarily matter, but the key is that this molecule handles a lot like propane. So the LPG industry can handle this with little extra effort. It's been safely transported and used as an aerosol propellant for years. You all probably have it in your home, whether it's for your hair products, spray tans, wart remover, that's what I use it for, whatever it may be, you've got it in your home most likely, and it can be produced from a variety of products. And obviously we're at the Biogas conference. I'm going to talk about organic wastes and how anaerobic digestion can lead to dimethyl ether, but mostly I'm going to focus on the market opportunities that brings to to farmers, to waste producers, to project developers, etc. And the market opportunities that dimethyl ether brings to this industry, I think are pretty exciting. Here's our plant in Brawley, California. We've been producing dimethyl ether for nearly 10 years. We've been producing renewable dimethyl ether since 2020, and it's in operation today. And we are shipping renewable dimethyl ether literally around the world. Most of this goes, though, to California, where Suburban Propane, the third largest propane company in the US, is blending it in with their propane fuel and putting it into forklifts in California. And you'll notice, every vessel there looks like a propane vessel, and that's because the LPG industry is investing and planning and doing the work to incorporate dimethyl ether into the supply chain. So the LPG industry is essential energy for off-grid applications. A lot of times I think we don't think about the LPG industry because it kind of just happens. It's there, but if you look, you'll see the trucks, you'll see the tanks, and it's providing energy to those who oftentimes don't have another option. So it's critical energy. It has a vast existing infrastructure that's built out and ready to take on renewables. It's already low carbon today, but the industry's making the investment to become even lower carbon. This is a busy slide. We're not going to go through all of this, but Indonesia, India, Europe and other countries are making moves to renewable, and there are many LPG companies and countries that are saying renewable dimethyl ether is part of that mix. It is going to be one of the molecules that we move on. So, a couple things I'll highlight here. The World LPG Association, based out of Paris, they're literally redefining the definitions of LPG, or the definition of LPG, to incorporate renewable dimethyl ether into that mix. Liquid Gas UK is doing technical research, and a number of companies sitting on the stage here, as well as in the audience, who are doing the work to be ready when as more renewable dimethyl ether comes to market. And that's why it's such an opportunity for the anaerobic digestion and the biogas industry. Here's just a spattering of logos of the companies that I work with almost weekly that are part of committees and working groups that are preparing the industry to either blend in DME into the LPG supply, or in some cases, use it in place of LPG for customers that demand a very low carbon or perhaps even a carbon negative fuel, which renewable DME can be. But it's not just the LPG industry. There are others as well who see the potential and see the future of dimethyl ether. Companies like Fiat Powertrain or FPT Industrial, they're researching DME. Ford is doing research in both Germany and Canada. California Air Resources Board is doing research on this front, and Stanadyne is a major fuel system component manufacturer. They've recently released a DME-compatible fuel system. The U.S. Department of Energy has invested money in 2021 for nearly $4.5 million, and I expect any day now, maybe even this Friday, we'll see, they're going to announce another $2.5 million in funding for DME research. And Los Alamos National Lab, with the Department of Energy, they've been researching, and we're part of this project, to do DME steam DME reforming. It says DME is an excellent hydrogen carrier, and reforming hydrogen off of DME. And here's kind of what that looks like. By using the LPG industry's transportation and storage, you can do what would be 3 tube trailers worth of hydrogen in one similar-sized LPG tanker. So it's, the challenge with hydrogen is how do I store it, how do I transport it? The LPG industry, through renewable dimethyl ether, is ready to help address that challenge. And we at Oberon Fuels see this opportunity, and in fact, we have a patent pending, or a patent filed, on a DME to hydrogen reformer. We're building one today, and yet this year, we'll have 1,000 kilogram per day DME to hydrogen reformer in operation, and in 2024, we'll start building units that do anywhere from 2,500 to 5,000 kilograms per day. So towards that end, we at Oberon Fuels are ready to go on this opportunity. We have plant designs prepared. On the left is the biogas plant. We use 50,000 cubes per day to feed into that, which I recognize is not small, but it's also not huge. That produces 9,000 tons per year of DME. On the right, we can also use methanol, renewable methanol as a feedstock. We just change our design a bit. And that project, with that process, we can scale it up considerably. If you look at the demand and the potential for taking biogas into DME, if we look at, let me open my cheat sheet because I have to do numbers. I don't do chemistry and I don't do numbers really well. So if we were to look at the European market potential of biogas, well, of DME, Europe could use 20 million tons per year of DME. But to put that into biogas terms, we could use 40 billion cubes per year of biogas, which is a tall order, but the point there is the demand through the LPG industry is there. And there are market opportunities that happen because of that demand. And by working with the LPG industry, we open up a hydrogen opportunity as well, because we can build out that hydrogen infrastructure nearly overnight. The last thing I'm going to mention, earlier today, we announced a partnership between Oberon Fuels and DCC. For those of you in Europe, you may know of DCC through Flowgas and Biogas, are their LPG companies in Europe. And through this partnership, we are kind of bringing the Oberon process to Europe and are actively pursuing biogas projects and biogas feeds to produce DME for this industry. So it's an exciting time for the industry as a whole. I have almost no doubt that my friend Sophia will talk more about this opportunity next. So, you know, really excited to be here, and I'll be around the show today and tomorrow, and I hope to have a chance to talk to a number of folks. Here is my contact information, and Keith, I have a barcode too. I don't know if mine works, but it should take you to the website. Thank you.
Oh no, it's another DME presentation. But what I think it does say is that it's a hugely exciting time for the off-grid energy sector. There's a lot going on. There's clearly a lot of investments that are being made. And I think that, you know, coming back to what Keith said earlier, and indeed Cinch, and I think everyone probably collectively through today has said, is we need a mix of solutions. So we're not wanting to shut off any doors anywhere. One of the things that I'm going to be talking about today is a little bit of a Brucey bonus, so to speak. We're going to be talking a little bit more about waste and about how we're using waste more generally at Dimeta. But you know, one thing that I would say with that as well is that we are feedstock agnostic when it comes to things that we're looking at. So when it comes to a variety of different bioenergy options, you know, they're all on the table. So maybe just building a little bit on what was said before, you know, the off-grid energy challenge is massive. We've got significant use of not just propane, but you know, a massive oil market, still a really substantial coal, solid fuel market across the world. And in order to address that, as I said before, we're going to need a mix of solutions. With that will be things like bio-LPG, it could be direct biomass, it could be biogas and biomethane as well. And DME is one of the new kids on the block, where there's a lot of talk about, as you can see just from the panel today, but something that is really beginning to make significant headway in this space. And it's something that certainly, I think in 2023, both with your announcement today, Cinch, and from Oberon, and just in general, you'll be hearing a lot more about DME moving forward. So on to what we're doing at Dimeta in terms of addressing this challenge. We were formed just over a year ago, so we've just celebrated our first birthday, which is a nice milestone to have reached. So we, as I say, we've been around for just over a year. We were brought together by SHV Energy, Keith, who you heard from before, but also another company called UGI International. So these are two of the biggest off-grid energy suppliers in the world who've come together and showcased this commitment again to producing renewable fuels, and that's where Dimeta was born. So we cover the whole supply chain essentially in terms of our engagement with DME. So all the way from producing it through to wholesaling it to the LPG industry and overseeing things like the technical trials and involved in the technical trials. You saw all the work that was going on, which Cinch put up on the screen earlier. We're kind of embedded and interwoven through a lot of these things. So all the way down from identifying partners, both on a feedstock perspective through to a technology perspective, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the plants and partnerships that we have in place, things that have been announced quite recently, some things from last year. But also around advocacy, and this is very much my bread and butter. So I do all the government relations, someone has to do it, and supposedly that's me. But working with policymakers is a really important thing that the whole industry, including, I know, representations from the World Biogas Association, others need to be doing, because you know, if we continue kind of down a kind of one-size-fits-all approach, and you know, the variety of solutions don't get the recognition or the support that they get in public policy, then we're going to be in exactly the same place as we are in 10 years' time, and we won't move forward. So it's really, really important that we capitalize on this momentum, not just for DME, but I think in general for a lot of off-grid bioenergy solutions right now. I'm going to skip over why the LPG market, because I think you've had that well enough previously. But again, the focus for me is a little bit about why waste. You know, and again, it comes back to this circular economy principle, circularity principle of let's solve problems and create solutions at the same time. As I said before, at Dimeta, we're feedstock agnostic, so this is just one of the routes that we're looking at. There are others, but again, similar to technologies, there's no one-size-fits-all approach to this. And actually, you know, producing fuels from waste provides a big opportunity. Particularly, as someone who, I've been to a variety of different countries, and each country has their own challenge when it comes to waste, but waste is always a problem in most places. It's something that is, by working with waste, we can encourage better collection. We can work towards, more ambitious targets when it comes to reducing waste. But again, throughout every projection that is generally out there, there's always going to be a waste problem. So let's try and work with it in the short to medium term. So one of the ways that we're doing this is that through our first major project at Dimeta is that we're working with a company called Circular Fuels. Circular Fuels are actually just based literally down the road in Wednesbury, near the local IKEA. If you are local to the West Midlands, that is where we are. I use that generally as a geographical pinpoint for me and the car. But Circular Fuels, again, is a kind of landmark coming together of a local company called Ctte and ourselves to create circular fuels. And what we're doing is we're going to be putting our first plant, which is converting around 220,000 tons of waste into 50 to 60,000 tons of DME. We're going to be doing this at Teesside. So we announced back in April, May last year that our first plant would be in Teesside, and that will be operational in 2025. To put this into context, and this is going back to a little bit to my previous role where I used to work for the UK LPG industry, the amount of product that's coming out of that is about equivalent to 25% of the UK LPG's domestic heat usage. So for homes, just for home heating and cooking, so it can make a significant dent, even though it might not seem like a great deal of product. It actually can have a really, really big impact when it comes to the UK LPG industry decarbonising. Here's just a sneak peek in terms of the first look at the plant. There's some more pictures that are available online if you go onto our website, and a fancy thing where you can be on like a video and go around and have a look at it. You can tell that I personally wasn't involved in generating that from my very technical overview of it. But you can get a feel for what it's going to look like at Teesside. And again, if you're keeping abreast of things that are going on with local clusters and investment zones, you'll see there's a lot of investment that is going into Teesside and continued funding and support that is going there. Another thing that we're doing is that we're not just stopping there, so we're looking at other ways that we can utilise waste. So we recently partnered with a company called Enerchem, who you may be familiar with. They're quite well known in the bioenergy and bioeconomy space. We're looking at plants for producing renewable and recycled carbon DME with them as well. They're already a leader in the methanol space, and we'll be looking at larger plants. So as I say before, what we were looking at was 50 Ctte. With someone like Enerchem, we're looking at the potential for things like 150 Ctte size plants. So again, that's making a bigger dent in terms of the impact to the LPG market in certain geographies. We're looking at North America and Europe just as much as we are with another recent partnership that we announced with a company called NextChem, who are based in Italy. So again, looking at a similar process of conversion. Again, waste is a challenge not just in Italy, but also globally. So again, big opportunities there. I think this was, to put it into context, as I said before, in terms of how we're looking at feedstocks and looking at technologies, we are agnostic, and waste, let's say, is an opportunity that we can still explore. There's other routes to get DME. Oberon's process and what you were talking about earlier in terms of biogas, Cinch is one route. You can also use other biomass feedstocks. There's a lot of different opportunities, and the industry is really capitalizing them on the moment. So collaboration is key. We're really open to hearing from people across the whole value chain, and be really interested in terms of any conversations that anybody wants to have over the course of today and tomorrow. Already had some very promising conversations, and we'll move on to discussion because I really don't want to be the last person keeping you all from going home or going to a very nice dinner this evening. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you all. That was some fantastic presentations. So I'm going to open it up to a Q&A. So get your questions ready, and while you're having a think, I'm going to use my privilege as a chair to take the first question. I think it's really for all of you, but perhaps Keith might be able to provide the initial context. So we've heard today from multiple different speakers about the potential of biogas to decarbonise particular sectors. You know, if you use all of the biomethane for transport, you can deliver X decarbonisation. How do you think, considering biogas is ultimately a limited resource, how do you think that limitation is going to impact the kind of demand for the product and that competition to get it to those particular sectors?
So I think subsidies will drive a lot of the decision making, but that will drive bad behaviour. It will also drive investments in areas which aren't economical, and then the subsidies will be taken away just as you've got another 17 years of depreciation of your capital plant. But I think what it will encourage is more upstream supply. I know Charlotte very often says we're only using 3% of the potential. I think we wrote a report that said that same figure, so hopefully we're keeping ourselves consistent. Hopefully what it will drive is investment in biogas supply, looking at new ways for increasing the amount, meaning the reason the Greek model gives a very negative carbon intensity is because it takes the biomethane emissions that would otherwise just go into the atmosphere as the basis, very different in Europe. So I think driving good behaviour, driving the amount of biomethane which would be available, and then you'll have a decision about the scale of operation. I think the challenge we have is that by definition a biogas facility is quite small, which goes against the economy of scale improvements. And that's going to be the balance. Of course, then if you've got a methane pipeline, maybe there'll be a CO2 pipeline. And then some of the reforming technologies where you're using all the carbon in a gaseous form. I mean, you either want to have a gas or a liquid. You don't really want to be processing solids or slurries. That's just not good economics. But I think driving good behaviour will drive an increase in the amount of biogas.
Thank you. Anything to add from anyone? Okay, I'm going to look out. Any questions? Oh, perfect.
Hi, this is the panel that I was most excited to hear from, and I'm really glad that this is the way of ending the day. It's very exciting. I want to let you know that 9 years ago on the National Geographic Explorer vessel, I met with Eyal, whose last name I can't remember, but he was an investor in Oberon Fuels, and he told me about dimethyl ether. And because I was doing biogas trainings at the time, I work at the University of South Florida, and I teach people how to build biodigesters at the small scale. He turned me on to the Volvo Oberon Fuels teaser where the guy says at the end, so what are we waiting for? It's easy, it's cheap, we can all do it. And you talked about skid-size refining plants that you could bring to the site where you were producing biomethane. And I'm wondering, in those 9 years that I've been using it every semester with my students and going around the world and telling people about the promise of DME and the methanol economy and all of these other great ideas for using carbon, as you're saying, my students are still asking, what are we waiting for? Where are these skid-sized small units that can help a small dairy farm or an apartment complex in New Delhi, where I've done a lot of my biogas work with really small microplants? Where are we sitting in that? Like, can we make DME basically at home, so to speak, or in a community? Are we at the point where we can create these better biofuels without huge capital investment, given all the advantages of the biodigester as such a low-cost solution? Where are we there?
Yeah, so, and I think it's funny you should ask that, because I remember when I joined Oberon Fuels 2 years ago, I'd seen on the website this piece about skid-sized or skid-mounted units. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. You can just pull it in the back of my Toyota Prius and hook it up and we'll be good to go. Now actually, and I don't drive a Toyota Prius. I drive a pickup because the skid's a little bigger than that. It's and it's actually when we say skid, it's skid mounted, so it's multiple units built off site, and then it kind of looks, I don't know. The engineers tell me it's not just like Legos, but to me it's kind of like Legos. You bring in the multiple skids, bring it on site, build it off site, bring it on, and put it together. It's still a pretty big unit. It's about we need about a hectare to build a plant. to take the biogas and produce it. So, you know, the short answer to that is I wish we did it at that scale. We've kind of went as small as we could go, and that's about about 10,000 kilotons per year, or 10 kilotons per year. So. You know, I'm not probably smart enough to say, but I think it has something to do with the laws of thermodynamics. But yeah, it's just the size and kind of putting everything together. You know, there's units of scale that fit into it, and that's you know, to hit a price point that works for the market, we've got to hit a certain size. And the bigger we go, the better it is from the price point. So
I'd worry about the safety. So yeah, it's a complex process, and it's a flammable gas that you're putting under pressure, and you'd need something intrinsically safe for the sort of application you were talking about, or not an awful lot of energy in one place. So I would be concerned about getting your students excited and thinking, well, if I can't buy one, I'll go into my garden shed and build one myself. Make sure that garden shed's well ventilated, you know.
They can still get excited about the other projects, though.
Yeah. Get them to come and work for a company. So you've got a few candidates to send them to here.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thanks. So Yadira from Cranfield, a quick question for Pierre. So great talk on seeing methane as a platform for carbon, not only energy. What was your view on using the carbon on the CO2 as well?
Yeah, CO2. You hear me? Yeah, okay. CO2, yeah, it's very interesting because, as you know, you have a lot of CO2 which is concentrated when producing anaerobic digestion. And for sure, CO2, we are talking about e-fuels with CO2 and H2, but it needs energy. But if we have enough renewable energy, then it's a very interesting solution to use this CO2 to build e-fuel or more CH4 that you can inject into the grids and then use it as carbon. And then you can see it also as a double storage, because this CO2 is a biogenic CO2 and you can store it into the material we are using every day. So this is a double interest.
Pierre, Emmanuel, you know what the E stands for, don't you, in e-fuel?
Can you...
You know what the E stands for in e-fuel?
Electricity.
No.
No.
Expensive.
Expensive. Yeah, it is, sure. But as you know, the prices of electricity will go down if solar and wind, today it's very low energy, so...
You're clearly not paying my bill, so if it's that low, you can pay my
because there is not enough renewable energy too, but we have to go into the future. And to go into the future, to decarbonize, we will need to electrify our transportation.
I look forward to having that amount of excess electricity available at that price point. But really, we need to be using that electricity to stop the primary hydrocarbon abstraction, and then maybe we can talk about that, and then maybe we could talk about direct air capture. But yeah, e-fuels will just be the champagne of propulsion fuels, I think it was recently described.
No, just for you to know, we already built this kind of solution in SUEZ in the south of France, in a wastewater treatment plant, where there is anaerobic digestion, and then and then there is solar panels built by the town. And we produce H2 from this solar panel, and we produce more CH4 that is injected into the grid. So for sure, economically, you need subsidies, no, but it is possible, technically, no issues. And I think that when electricity prices will go down, this is a very good choice.
Nuclear electricity, I'm sure.
This is down now.
Any further questions? Perhaps time for one more? Oh,
I understand. Thanks for the presentations. The The DME extraction from biomethane, I'm assuming that's already been upgraded from the biogas. Is there a financial model to make that, rather than just using the biomethane for transport or injecting to grid, is it actually valuable enough to then convert it to DME as well? Is there enough of a business model?
Yeah, so we like the raw biogas. You know, we want the methane and the CO2, and so that tends to be what we look at. To actually upgrade it, inject it into the grid, and then take it out and reinsert CO2 doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. But we have looked at projects like that. We certainly use methane or can use methane or renewable natural gas out of the grid to supplement the process. So again, it's not the ideal because you're doing all the work to take out the CO2 and then you have to reintroduce the CO2. Yeah, you're adding cost to the process for sure. But sometimes to get to volume, we tend to look at kind of every project and model it out and see how it works. So I wouldn't write it off carte blanche, but I think it generally doesn't make a lot of sense.
So just to follow up on that point, is this suggestion to install this technology at an AD plant rather than a centralized facility?
Yep, so that's the ideal, and kind of this sort of project that really makes a lot of sense for Oberon is you've got a biogas plant that for whatever reason can inject into the grid. It's far enough off, typically it's because it's just far enough off the natural gas line that injecting is a challenge. Let's take and turn that into DME, and we certainly want to be co-located with the anaerobic digester, and then you've got the propane trucks that come, or the LPG trucks that come and pick it up like they do every day, and it's low pressure, easy to handle. So that's the model we look at. We look at it as really complementary to natural gas. It's just another option for projects and a new market for developers.
Great, thank you very much. I think that really concludes this session and also the day in this tent, I guess you'd call it. So I'd like to once again thank you to the speakers and thank you for attending. And hopefully see you tonight for some drinks if those who are joining. Thank you.